Hello everyone, and today we are going to look at an amazing game which was played in 1834 between Alexander McDonnell, who was an Irish player, and Louis Charles de la Bourdonnais, who was a French player. This game has been featured in the Mammoth Book of the World's Greatest Chess Games, and this game really teaches us what is the importance of the pawns, especially in the middle game and in the end game. There are a few more takeaways from this game which we will discuss at the end. So let's get started and check out this amazing game played between these two players. McDonnell is playing with white pieces and he starts with e4. We have c5, the Sicilian defense, knight to f3, knight to c6, and d4 immediately striking in the center. C captures d4 and knight captures d4. e5, kicking away this knight, and now knight captures c6, b captures c6. McDonnell develops the light square bishop, bishop to c4, and now knight to f6, developing this knight and also attacking this e4 pawn. McDonnell prevents this idea by pinning the knight, bishop to g5. And now bishop to e7, now preparing to castle and also developing this dark square bishop. Also, this knight is not pinned anymore, so this e4 attack is again there. And the best way to protect this pawn is by playing knight to c3. However, McDonnell tries queen to e2. And now with this move, he loses control of the d file, and Charles immediately takes advantage of this and pushes d5, striking in the center. McDonnell exchanges bishop with the knight, bishop captures f6, bishop captures f6, and now bishop to b3. Both the players castle, and now a5. There is an idea of pushing this pawn to a4 and trapping this light square bishop. So e captures d5, c captures d5, and now rook to d1. There is a double attack on this d5 pawn, and if this a4 pawn is pushed, you can always capture this d5 pawn with the bishop. This rook is nicely aligned with the queen, and if you give a check, sacrificing your bishop, you can always pick up this queen. So this is a tough position for black. So you have to protect this d5 pawn, and Charles pushes the d5 pawn, d4. We have an interesting idea now from McDonnell, c4. With this c4 move, McDonnell creates his own pass pawn because you cannot capture this pawn en passant. And if you capture this en passant, the queen hangs and it will be captured. So this is a beautiful move which creates a pass pawn, even though this c4 pass pawn is not as fast as black's pass pawns. And also black's pass pawn is currently connected. So let's see how McDonnell pushes this c4 pass pawn in future. We have queen to b6, now moving this queen away from this file, and bishop to c2, putting some pressure on the h7 pawn. We have bishop to b7, finally developing this light square bishop. Now in this position, you might feel that this pawn is up for grabs because it's free, but it's actually not a free pawn. It's a poison pawn, because after bishop capture h7, you can always pick up this black queen, and the game will be completely lost. So this would be a blunder if you try to capture this poison pawn. So after bishop to b7, we have knight to d2, the only good square for this knight to develop. Rook a to e8, finally putting this rook behind this pawn, and now these pawns are ready to be pushed. We have knight to e4, attacking this dark square bishop, and bishop to d8. Now f5 is an idea to kick away this knight, and there is an excellent attack and pressure on this g2 pawn now. McDonnell pushes c5, attacking this queen, and now queen to c6. Now this f5 is a real threat because there is a threat of checkmate on this long diagonal. And if you do not move this knight, then this knight will be lost after f5. So McDonnell prevents this idea by pushing f3. Now this knight is free to move, and most probably this knight is coming to the d6 square, because from here it will be able to exchange one of these two pieces. And you really don't want to part ways with this excellent attacking piece in this position. So Louis tries bishop to e7, now with an idea that if this knight is played to d6, it can always be exchanged with this bishop. We have rook a to c1. Now nicely aligning this rook with the queen, and here f5, finally pushing this f5 pawn. Now before moving this knight, we have queen to c4 check. King moves to h8, and now a very nice skewer, bishop to a4. Now you can see that there is a skewer on the queen and on the rook. So you have to save this queen. Queen moves to h6. And here in this position, McDonnell decides to remove this rook. Bishop captures e8. Louis decides to eliminate this beautifully placed knight in the center with f captures e4. And here c6, attacking this light square bishop. And Louis doesn't even try to save it and plays e captures f3. Now you would be wondering why he did not save this bishop. Because if McDonnell tries to capture this bishop with c captures b7, then this is a completely lost position because this is mate in 6. After queen to e3 check, king has either two squares, either h1 or f1. However, the result will be exactly the same. For example, here king to h1, f captures g2 check, king captures g2, and now rook comes flying in, rook to f2 check. King moves to h1, and now queen to e4 check. King to g1 and queen to g2 is checkmate. So in this position, this this bishop cannot be captured. So Louis grabs this pawn with e captures f3. McDonnell plays rook to c2. Now this rook will be an excellent defensive piece on the second rank. Queen to e3 check, king to h1, and finally saving this light square bishop, bishop to c8. Bishop to d7, offering an exchange, and now f2, finally pushing this pass pawn. Rook to f1 and d3, attacking this second rook. Rook comes to c3, and now there's a double attack on this d pawn. There's an exchange. Bishop captures g7, c captures g7, and e4, finally saving this pawn. And now you can see this massive pawn chain in the center, which is really the essence of this game. And let's see how Louis pushes these pawns to advantage. McDonnell plays queen to c8, offering this queen. And of course, you cannot capture this queen because this will completely blunder. The pawn will queen once again, the rook will be lost, and position is crumbled. We have bishop to d8 preventing this idea, and now queen back to c4. Queen to e1, a similar idea from Louis. There's an attack on this rook, and there's a threat of checkmate. And this rook cannot capture this queen because this pawn will queen once again, and it will be checkmate. So the only way to save this, rook to c1. We have d2 now attacking this rook on c1 square, and queen to c5, threatening a checkmate by capturing this rook. Rook moves to g8, and now rook to d1, finally saving this rook, and e3, connecting these pass pawns, and these pass pawns look really scary. The beauty is that this queen cannot be captured because it's protected by these two pass pawns, and even if white tries to sacrifice the two rooks, it will be a quick checkmate for black, and it's a completely lost position for white. So after this e3 move, we have queen to c3, and here Louis Charles plays absolute best move. Queen captures d1, eliminating one of these rooks, and after rook captures d1, he played the best move, e2. Remember, the pass pawns should be pushed. And it was in this position that Alexander McDonnell decided to resign because there was nothing much to be done. You can capture this d2 pawn with either the rook or the queen. However, the result will be the same. For example, after rook captures d2, simply this f pawn promotes to a queen and it's a checkmate. Or you can try to grab it with the queen, but it's the same result actually. So yeah, beautiful game played by Louis Charles against Alexander McDonnell. There are some key takeaways of this game. First one, a large mobile pawn chain in the center is a good strategic asset, and you should always preserve these pawns in the center. Second, don't be afraid to sacrifice to press forward to your main strategic goal, which is pushing these pawn chain in the center. Third one, when your pawns are really far advanced, Always look out for tactical tricks involving promotion, even if you have to sacrifice your queen, just like we saw in the game. So thank you very much for watching this this beautiful game between Alexander McDonnell and Louis Charles de la Bourdonnais. Hope you liked this video. Thank you once again.